This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the second in our two-part conversation with Joe Kissell, the author of Take Control of iCloud. In the first part, Joe talked about the age-old question of, can I drop Dropbox in favor of iCloud? He also comments on whether you would want to store your home directory and desktop in iCloud to use across multiple devices, and a whole lot more. So let's get back to it with Joe. One question I feel like I always ask, but I think it's important, and you referred to a couple gotchas earlier, but that was more in the Dropbox versus iCloud kind of discussion. For just a strictly Mac user who isn't trying to do that comparison, do we have any significant gotchas right now with iCloud?
So one of the questions that one of these user group members asked, I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but it was something like, is it safe to use iCloud now? Because in the past, I would have weird random syncing problems and data would disappear and like stuff would go wrong. And I'm like, how do I even answer? How do I start answering that? I mean, the one way of answering it is that iCloud has gotten more and more robust as years have gone on. The bugs have decreased. The syncing reliability has increased. I can't tell you that there will never be syncing problems or other problems, because of course there will. Stuff still randomly goes wrong. I can tell you that in my experience, problems have been less and less frequent. Especially big problems, especially like data loss problems. Like it's one thing if, calendars weren't syncing correctly for 2 hours on Saturday. Those things, happen from time to time, but like big, scary data eating bugs are exceptionally rare. The frustrating thing is I can tell you, number one, this has been my experience. I think it's mostly pretty robust. Number two, you can always go to Apple's status page to check on, is anything wonky on their servers at this particular moment. Number three, of course, you're going to have great backups of everything just in case. But you can do all those things and still the very next day you could have some major problem. Of course, that's also true of everything. If you decide you just don't like or trust Apple and you decide to go with, Microsoft 365 or Dropbox or Google Calendars and Google, Gmail and Google Drive and all those things, or Amazon stuff, pick an ecosystem and tell me it hasn't had problems. They've all had problems, and they're all going to continue having problems. So I guess what I would say is there aren't any sort of global gotchas that I am aware of that are like, this is a major problem for everybody no matter what. There are periodic small gotchas. I mean, you sort of preface by saying, what if you're just a Mac user, only in Apple's ecosystem? Obviously, there are fewer. If you have to interact with other systems, like if you have your calendar on Google and your files on, OneDrive and, your contact, like if you're using different ecosystems, or if you are sharing information or files or calendars, whatever, with people who are using different ecosystems, then the likelihood of things going wrong increases. But if you're all within Apple's world, I mean, I can certainly say it's never been better. I would never say that it's perfect, but it's getting better all the time.
Well, we've talked so many times on the show about a lot of different services, Apple's and others, that syncing you would think syncing should be the easiest thing in the world. And syncing is one of the most difficult things to get right, especially if you're trying. If it's one thing for me to be working on a file on my machine and say, okay, Joe, here, I'll share it with you, and it's going to, automatically go to yours. That's fine. If we are both working on it at the same time, then trying to figure out whose version gets saved or do they get meshed together. It's funny you said it, because just a couple days ago, I had a data loss syncing situation, not with iCloud or Dropbox. It was from another corporately endorsed system, and I'm working on a document. It's like, wait a minute, I already did this, and I looked everywhere, and it was gone. So I had to redo it. Now, it wasn't a big deal, happily, but those kind of things can happen. But I feel like right now with iCloud, I feel a whole lot more secure. And if there's nothing that is really repeatable or regular or significant, I mean, that just makes it kind of a no-brainer being a Mac user, or an Apple user, I should say. Especially since, if I want to use Dropbox, I can do that. If I want to use Adobe or OneDrive or whatever, I can stack those in my machine too and use them all separately and, just deal with their individual characteristics.
Yeah. I mean, all things being equal, I think iCloud is a pretty solid, pretty robust system for people that live only or mostly in the Apple world. A lot of what this book ends up doing is saying, now, when you get here and you do this thing and you expect that this is going to happen, actually that thing doesn't happen. This thing over here happens. And sometimes I can explain why. Sometimes I'm just like, it's Apple. Never ask me why when it comes to Apple, because who knows. But even if I can't explain why a thing happens or why, even if I can't make you happy about a thing, basically, I at least feel like forewarned is forearmed. So I want to forewarn you about things that could potentially confuse you or get you in trouble, so that at least you know what to expect and can work around the most aggravating things.
Well, I think the example you gave of Apple has optimized storage, but doesn't really tell you how it figures it out or which one it's going to sync or unsync. I mean, that I understand. I think I understand why they're doing it. And again, we've talked about this: the difference between the geek user at whatever level who says I want to manage that, and the other user, the common user, who just says I don't care, just do it, and don't bother me with the details. So
here's what I feel. Apple has tried so hard to idiot-proof everything that they actually end up genius-proofing things. Like, Apple wants everything to look so simple. Like, oh, we don't have a bunch of checkboxes and buttons and columns and tables. It's just there. It just works. It's magic. I'm like, okay, that's great for my mom who has very simple needs. But I need to know what's going on. I need more control. I can handle some more icons. I can handle some more checkboxes. I can handle, command line stuff and hidden preferences. Give it, lay it on me. But no, I can't have what I need. And even in their effort, even to the extent that their changes are geared toward less sophisticated users, what I'm finding is that less sophisticated users come to me and ask me questions like, how do I know where my files are? I think we've talked about this before. I'm sure we have, but in a year ago, iOS 13, iPadOS 13, Apple made this change to Safari, mobile version of Safari. So you go on a website, tap a link to download a file. Now, it used to be that Safari would download it, and if it wasn't a file like a graphic or a PDF that Safari could natively display, you'd be like, well, I got an EPUB file here. What do you want me to do with it? And you could you're in Safari and you see, well, there's the file. I'm going to have to tap it and share this to an app that can open it. iOS 13, iPadOS 13, Apple changed that. Now you tap a link, the file downloads. And if you look very closely and very carefully at just the right time, you might see a little icon in Safari's toolbar. That's the I'm in the process of downloading something. And then it disappears. You're like, okay, so it looks to me like I tapped a link and nothing happened. I'll tap it again. I'll tap it again. I'll tap it again. I don't see the file anywhere. Well, what has happened is that Apple decided downloads are now going to go into the Files app. You open up the Files app, you look in the Downloads folder, there's the 7 copies of that book you just downloaded. There it is. Well, but Apple didn't tell you that. Nothing popped up in Safari saying, hey, everybody, change of behavior. I know we've done it this way for the last 10 years, but now it's different. Now you got to go here to find this file. It's just nothing. There was no indication of that at all. So I had a guy literally an hour ago call me on the telephone and say, I bought one of your books on my iPad. I downloaded it. Where's my book? I'm like, we got to go into the Files app. He's like, what's the Files app? And I said, well, it's an app called Files. It's like, well, where is it? I don't know, wherever you put it. Do I have to download the app? No, it comes automatically on your iPad. It's there someplace. Well, where is it? Well, you can use the Find feature. What's that? How do I find the Find feature? Great question. How do you find the Find feature? Well, I know that you swipe down on the screen and then a little search bar appears at the top. I know that because I read it on some website a million years ago. But there's nothing on the screen that's going to tell you that. So these poor people, they bought a book, downloaded the book, but they don't know where it is. They've never heard of the Files app. They don't know where to find the Files app. They don't know where to find Find. And Apple has done nothing to say, it just said, hey, tap here to download your brand new iOS or iPadOS. Great, I tapped it, it's downloaded. But there is no now wait a minute. You better read these instructions. We're going to walk you through what's new and help you find the things that are in different places. None of that. And that's just infuriating to me. Even all this time later, people are struggling. And it's because Apple wants to make the screen look simple. Well, we don't want to have an intrusive search field always sticking there at the top of every screen. That's not elegant. But you can just do this. It's easy. Yeah, but how would you know to do that? How are you going to remember to do that? We're not gonna trap your downloads in Safari where you have to keep downloading them again every time. We're going to do you a favor by putting them in this great, terrific system-wide Files app, which we haven't mentioned to you exists, or if you happen to notice it, you didn't know what it was, why you should bother ever opening it. So it's not just a matter of idiot-proofing things. It's a matter of teaching. So that's why I have this book.
Yeah.
That's why I have this whole company. That's why we do Take Control Books. Is that Apple? Mainly, but other companies too. But Apple does a lousy job of explaining to ordinary users how this super simple stuff actually works. And so, thanks for that, Apple. It pays my mortgage, but honestly, cut it out.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. By visiting linode.com/MacVoices, you can take $20 off your first server package. So what are you buying? You are buying a service that delivers dedicated CPUs, distributed applications, hosted websites, and CI/CD environments. You are buying native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors, so your website or hosted service will be as fast as possible and as responsive as possible. You are buying a spot in one of Linode's 10 worldwide data centers, including the newest in Mumbai. You are buying their new Cloud Manager feature with an improved user interface. You are buying one-click installs of things like WordPress, Minecraft, VPNs, and much more. That's what you're buying when you visit linode.com/MacVoices, and you get $20 off your first server package to boot. Get your next project off the ground and into the cloud at linode.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. It is interesting when you think about the fact that documentation now, I mean, at one time, documentation was sort of an art form. And now it's an entire industry unto itself because almost nobody, and I'm going to say almost nobody because there are a couple exceptions out there, at least the ones that I can think of, they don't give you adequate tutorials or documentation of any kind. And in today's world, it's even easier because you don't have to ship the paper. You just go to the website or put in a note card that says "Love you." Go to this website, and that's where you'll find it. So, yeah, I'm like you. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad all the Take Control authors are here because they help us, get the stuff right. But it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Joe, One other thing before we get out of here, though. iCloud is so central to so many of the Apple services and all. And like I'm thinking photos, notes, so many things. I realize that you all have separate Take Control books that are dedicated just to those. But how much detail do you go into in this book to help people understand what's going on and what has changed in iCloud for those services?
I have a whole chapter on what has changed since the last however long, year and a half. Even for things that haven't changed or haven't changed much, I kind of give you the basics of, all right, so here's what iCloud does with your mail. Here's what iCloud does with notes. Here's what iCloud does with contacts. Now, if I'm talking about notes, the only aspect of notes that I'm really talking about is the getting the syncing going and maybe a couple of brief words about using the web app on iCloud.com. I'm not going into detail about all the stuff that you can do in the Notes app. I'm just talking about iCloud's part of that. Same thing with mail. I have a whole book on Apple Mail. I'm talking, in the iCloud book, I talk about your iCloud email account and using the Mail app on the iCloud website briefly, and what kinds of data syncs and what kinds of data doesn't sync, and how to change the syncing of different kinds of data, but not about using the app. So it's kind of the same way with everything. We have our book on calendar reminders, our book on photos, our all the different ones. Those books go into detail about all the other stuff that app can do, and the iCloud book is specifically about the online portion, the storage, the syncing, the accounts, the security, all that infrastructure stuff.
Got it. Okay. I just think it's important to note, that this book can't possibly cover everything because then you'd be writing 4 or 5 different Take Control books into one.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah. So the book's out now. What kind of pricing, as always, we have to ask?
Sure. So it's a $14.99 book. People who had any previous edition of it can upgrade for $5. Let me just say, when I do a new edition of a book, I have to always figure out, okay, well, how much really changed? How much work did I put into this? How many new pages are there? That kind of thing. And I have to say, well, does this feel like a $2 upgrade? Does this feel like a $7.50 upgrade? Does this feel like a $10 upgrade? I'm going to say this feels like a $7.50 upgrade, but we're only charging $5 for it. There's a lot of new stuff. It's a very, very, very big new edition, but we're only charging $5 for it because we want to make it accessible to as many people as possible. We want as many of the many thousands of people who over the years have bought previous versions of this book. We want them all to have updated information. current information, and we want to make the barrier to getting it as low as we can. So $5 to upgrade, $15 new, and we hope you'll enjoy it.
Perfect. And I'll do my usual thing. $5 or the regular price. I mean, this is so cheap to have someone hand walk you through all of these changes or features and everything, and get the most out of the money you've already spent invested in your Mac and in the what you've already spent the money. So spend just a little bit more and get so much more out of it. No question about it. And that's TakeControlBooks.com, where you can find Joe's book and all the other great Take Control authors that you hear on MacVoices and that you hear and see other places. Joe, thank you. Thank you for this. As always, it's enlightening, and it's if nothing else, it's good to get an update on exactly what is happening, where, and how. So, and I have from what you said earlier, we'll be talking more often.
Oh, just look at all those post-it notes. I just need time. I mean, oh man.
Not today, but one day we're going to get you to turn the camera, blur it a little bit so nobody can read it, and then we'll get a sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. TakeControlBooks.com for Joe's book and all the other great books. Please go check them out. You will get so much out of each and every one of them. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.